Sometimes the simplest ideas can yield you the best results. And in this case, I use some common household items to create some amazing backgrounds. The first technique only requires school glue, table salt, and watercolors. And the results really surprised me. You start by squeezing the glue to create your desired design. I do this in two different ways. First, I just create curved lines across my page as I don't have a specific design in mind. I just want to test a technique. I squeeze the bottle as I move my hand across the page to create the lines, and add more glue if needed in certain areas if the line is too thin. It's really easy to control, which gives me the idea that maybe I should create an actual design. But first I need to add the salt. I pour the salt over the glue, making sure it covers everything. Then shake off the excess onto a different paper to save it for the next design. It's important to really remove all the excess salt. Then I set the glue to dry. For my second design, I decide to write the word love across my paper. However, since I can't do it freehand, I first write it with a pencil. I'm not great at calligraphy as I don't have a lot of practice, but you get the gist of it, and I'm able to easily trace it with the glue. Then using the leftover salt, I pour it all over the background and shake off the excess salt as well. I let both of these air dry while I move on to the next technique. However, you can use the heat tool as well. In the meantime, I start the next background with 3 simple products: colorful birthday candles, matches, and acrylic paint. I've done this technique before, and I not only love it, but I'm addicted. I light my first candle, which is pink, and then start dripping the wax across the paper. I use that candle to light the next one, which is blue, and let them drip across the page. I want to spread the colors evenly on the paper, so I make sure I move my hands to different areas of the paper. I light the next 2 candles and add 2 more colorful drips to the background. Once the wax dries, which doesn't take long, I paint the whole background with acrylic paint. You will get the best results with a dark color. I want to use black, but I couldn't find a bottle, so instead I use Payne's Gray, which has a blue undertone and is very close to black. I let the paint dry, as heat setting it could melt the wax underneath. The glue from my first background is still drying, so I continue to my third technique, which only requires watercolors and a straw. I think this technique is called blow art, and yes, it's often done in kindergarten, but honestly, it yields some amazing results. So why not try it, especially since there's a surprise bonus attached to this technique. To make sure you get good results, you need to really water down the watercolor paint. I start by adding it to the edge of the paper and water it down even more. Then using a straw, I blow the paint across the page. It creates the most beautiful abstract lines. They remind me of arteries or veins. I continue the same way with purple, as I love colors that complement each other, like magenta and purple. I add a lot of water again and blow with the straw as well. I try to add lines all over the page to make sure I fill the composition. That's why I turn the paper around so I can fill in the blank spaces and have lines going all directions. It makes it look like neurons or a spider web. I continue adding some blue lines as they also complement the magenta and the purple. Then I feel like it needs some yellow to brighten things up, so I add some yellow lines as well. You will soon see how amazing these backgrounds turn out when I cut the panel. But first, let's get back to my first technique. Remember the salt? Well, it finally dries. However, I realize that some of the salt is dislodging from the top, so I decide to shake off all the excess. It does reduce the volume a bit, but you will soon see that it still looks amazing once I add the watercolor. I just want to make sure there's no loose salt particles. And now I've reached the most relaxing and addictive part of this video. I water down my watercolors, and using the tip of my paintbrush, I add a little color over the texture design. I love seeing the color spread across the salt. I'm honestly so surprised it doesn't spread outside the lines. And I'm also glad it doesn't. I start adding more colors, and my favorite part is when I add color to the line connector. I love seeing it spread in all directions. It's so satisfying to watch. I continue spreading the colors using warm colors like red, orange, and yellow until I'm done with all the lines. For the love background, I do the same thing and paint each letter in a different color. I paint L in magenta, the O in purple, the V in blue, and the E in green. This technique has so much texture that it would look so amazing in an art journal, and I'm thinking to cut this word out and maybe use it for that purpose, as the first background I turn into a very unique card. I also turn the blow art panel into cards by cutting down the panel into 4x4-inch squares and adding a simple sentiment on each one. And remember the candle background? I know you haven't forgotten. Well, the paint is fully dry, and so I start rubbing it with a wipe across the raised circles. The wipes rub off the acrylic paint over the wax as it resists the paint. The background looks like party confetti with lots of colors, and I easily turn it into a simple birthday card by adding a sentiment. It is so satisfying creating backgrounds with common household items, like I also did in this video right here, where I use shaving cream, saran wrap, and dish soap in 3 different techniques to create more amazing backgrounds.